So good afternoon. Today we'll be detailing a stimulus plan to help support small businesses here in the Commonwealth that have been impacted by COVID. First, I want to give a quick update on our daily COVID numbers. Yesterday, the Department of Public Health reported 3,293 new COVID cases. 62,100 molecular tests were reported, and over 10.3 million tests have been conducted to date. Roughly 2,000 patients are in the hospital being treated for COVID, and just over 400 are in the ICU. Massachusetts and many states across the country are obviously in the midst of a pretty significant second surge of COVID. And we know folks are worn out by this and are looking forward to the holidays, but we can't let it up when it comes to continuing to fight this virus. It's when we let our guard down, especially in group settings where precautions aren't being followed, that COVID spreads. We saw this loud and clear after Thanksgiving, when infections and then hospitalizations both increased dramatically. The trends over the past few days are down slightly, but not enough as we head into the height of this holiday season. During the next several days, we're likely to see another surge in cases and hospitalizations unless everybody pursues a very safe and publicly oriented set of decisions. It's critical for us that our healthcare system continue to have the capacity to take care of patients who need their care. We can't afford to have them stretched to or beyond the limit, especially while they're still stabilizing from the rush after Thanksgiving. We're urging all our residents to limit their holidays to celebrations with only members of their immediate households. It's just for 1 year, and there are brighter days around the corner. We've also taken additional steps to suppress the spread of COVID by pausing activity and limiting mobility through a variety of orders that we issued yesterday that will take effect on Saturday for the next couple of weeks. And we hope these restrictions are temporary and that they stay in place for a reasonably short period of time. We get the fact that these decisions have consequences and that the impact of these decisions has serious impacts on people's lives, and we don't take that lightly. On the good news side of things, Congress did pass a $900 billion stimulus plan that includes funding for individuals, families, businesses, and more, and we urge the President to sign it. People on both sides of the aisle are right to be frustrated by parts of this bill, but no one's more upset about the current state of affairs than everyone who's out there struggling to find a way to get by. The congressional bill does contain critical funding that will go a long way to supporting people here in Massachusetts, and there is certainly an urgent need for this help. But in addition to that, while we wait for the feds to close the deal, we're launching a $668 million small business relief fund. This money will go to restaurants, retailers, and other businesses that have been hit hard by COVID. The program relies in part on President Trump signing the bill because it creates some flexibility with respect to how we can use federal funds. But regardless of whether he acts soon, the Commonwealth will begin awarding millions of dollars in new funding to restaurants, retailers, and other small businesses as soon as next week. These grants of up to $75,000 or 3 months of operating expenses are designed to help small businesses pay employees, pay their rent, pay down debt, pay their utilities, or other costs of operation. The new program will be administered by the folks at the Mass Growth Capital Corporation and will complement the existing small business grant program that we were here talking about earlier this week. Lieutenant Governor Polito will provide more detail on this shortly. I think, as everybody know, on Monday we announced the first round of awards from this program, which consisted of about $49 million for 1,158 businesses. The next round of awards will go to eligible businesses that applied already to the Mass Growth Capital Corp Small Business Grant Release Program this past fall, but haven't yet been funded. those businesses don't need to reapply. Again, we expect some of those grant notifications will start going out the door next week to these small businesses. The President obviously has signaled some uncertainty with respect to the bill that's currently before him. But the truth is that the Commonwealth nor the country should be required to wait any longer for this relief. Washington took a very long time to get to a deal here, and now more than ever they need to put politics aside and support the American people who have worked so hard to battle and fight their way through COVID. The federal stimulus obviously isn't perfect, but it contains many of the dollars we were looking for, specifically for unemployment assistance, business relief, additional testing and tracing, and vaccination support, and rental assistance, and a variety of other programs that will support COVID-related efforts. And residents obviously need this support now, and we urge the President to sign this bill. As we start to look back on 2020, it's pretty clear that everybody's been impacted in one way or another by this virus over the course of this year. For all the hardships and the grief, and there's been a lot, there have certainly been stories of hope, support, grace, kindness, and ingenuity that capture the spirit of the Commonwealth. And I know I speak for everybody on our team when I say how grateful we are for people's grit and resilience. And we really want people to continue to hang in there a little longer. Vaccines are already here. About 35,000 people have already had their first dose administered, and thousands more are on the way. I've talked many times about the fact that COVID feels like a hurricane that never leaves. But as we move forward into 2021, there are means and mechanisms coming to soften the blow, and hopefully with the arrival of the vaccine on a grand scale, to put it somewhat in the rearview mirror. I want to thank everybody again for doing their part. And with that, I will turn it over to the Lieutenant Governor.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Governor. Massachusetts is currently experiencing a second surge of COVID-19. And as we head into the remainder of the holiday season, it is critical. It's critically important that we stop the spread of this disease in our communities. Yesterday, we announced additional restrictions for businesses to lower capacity and help keep people more spread out for a couple of weeks. In addition to our other safety guidance, we understand that these adjustments are very difficult for businesses and workers, especially on top of a lot of sacrifices they've already made. We truly hope that these restrictions will be temporary. As we work to suppress the virus, businesses need more help now. And we are pleased that Congress passed the federal stimulus package, and we certainly hope that it will be real and help bridge that gap to the vaccine. And today, we importantly announce a $668 million small business relief package to further support our Massachusetts small businesses. The $668 million state fund will be allocated toward an existing grant program that many businesses in Massachusetts have already applied for, and into a new grant program, both administered through the Mass Growth Capital Corp. The MGCC will first award grants to eligible applicants in the existing pool, and the portal for new applications to a new program will open on December 31st. Businesses that have already applied this fall do not need to reapply. Grants through the new program are available to businesses and sectors that have been hardest hit by COVID-19. That includes restaurants, bars, and caterers. It also includes indoor recreation and entertainment venues, gyms and fitness centers, event support professions like photographers and videographers, and personal services like nail, salons and barbershops, and retailers. As the governor said, funding will be available in grants of up to $75,000 or 3 months of operating expenses. These include for-profit businesses that have a physical establishment in Massachusetts. They also must be able to document a loss of income as much as or higher than their grant request due to the pandemic. The online portal for new applications will open on Thursday, December 31st, and will close on Friday, January 15th, after a 2-week application period. To apply, businesses should visit empoweringsmallbusiness.org. Details about the new program will be posted there early next week. That's empoweringsmallbusiness.org. Before I turn it over to Secretary Keneally, as we end this year, I think back on the challenges and obstacles we have all faced over these last 10 months. 2020 has been exceptionally difficult for all of us, especially our businesses and our workforce. But there are signs that the future will be better and brighter. Vaccines are here and being administered every day, and more aid is becoming available. We all just need to hang in there just a little bit longer to fight the virus. We are optimistic that we will be back to normal soon. The people of our great state never fail to impress us. Their resilience, their patience, and yes, their frustration. But working together, we will continue to make progress as we round out this year and head into 2021. But through all these struggles, our businesses have had to adopt protocols and help their workers, assure their customers that they will be safe in their establishments. They've been creative, resourceful, and they've worked extremely hard. And people in our communities have stepped up to help their neighbors and their communities and all that they cherish within the community that they call home. So the message as we head into the holidays is to stay safe. We know it won't be the same, but for this year, we know it has to be different. And for those of you that haven't finished your shopping, please not think about it, but get out and buy your gift certificates, take out some meals, think about the local shops and restaurants that you so love, and you want to see them continue to operate and be a part of your downtowns and main streets in 2021. So do a little bit extra if you can to support them. I also just want to say how grateful I am for the people of this Commonwealth, for your hard work, for your watching out not only but for your family, but for your neighbors as well. I wish you, from our family to yours, a safe and healthy holiday. I'd now like to turn it over to Secretary Keneally. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor, Lieutenant Governor. On Monday, we announced $49 million in grants for some of the hardest hit businesses in the Commonwealth, directing funds to minority-owned companies. Thanks to partnerships with the many advocates that support minority enterprises, we were able to attract a pool of applicants that was diverse in all respects. Yesterday, we said that we were working to deliver new state funding that meets this moment, that is tailored to our needs in Massachusetts, and that is complementary to recent federal actions. The $668 million relief package that we announced today does just that. There is little about this pandemic that doesn't come with urgency, and supporting our small businesses is a top priority. Some of the funding we announced today will be used to fulfill requests made by eligible businesses that submitted a complete application to the Small Business Grant Program in the fall, but who were not awarded a grant on Monday. Applications are going live on the last day of 2020 for new applicants, a fitting date, if you ask me, as we give hope to businesses who have experienced such hardship this year. Businesses will have 2 weeks to apply, and by February, we'll be moving this money out the door. I want to thank again the team at Mass Growth Capital for what will be a Herculean task of processing the applications that will come in for this relief. Mass Growth Capital has been an amazing partner throughout this crisis. I also want to extend my appreciation to the industry associations who represent all kinds of businesses across the Commonwealth. You've been vocal advocates for your members and great partners with the administration. Your constant communication has helped us to realize where the biggest needs are and given us the insights we needed to create this program. I also know that you'll make sure your members know about it. We have created this relief package to help the businesses we all love to secure their future. This is so important for the livelihoods of the owners and their employees, for the vibrancy of our downtowns, and for the state's overall economic recovery. To our businesses and entrepreneurs, your resiliency is inspiring, and your ability to adapt in these challenging times is remarkable. Please apply for these funds and put them to good use. And to our residents, please be safe, enjoy the holidays at home, and keep spending locally. Thank you.
Questions?
It's two-thirds of $1 million. Where is that money coming from, and how much of it is going to be reliant on future federal aid?
None of it is reliant on future federal aid, but there were a series of really important changes in how previous aid could be allocated that were a big deal to both state, county, and local governments. Some of it's coming from there, and some of it's coming from state funds as well.
And what can they use this money for once they receive it? You said starting next week. What are some of the things they can use it for?
Utilities, rent, pay down debt, make debt payments, pay their employees. I mean, there's a wide variety of things they can apply those expenses to.
And it's up to $75,000?
Yes, it's up to $75,000. Or 3 months worth of expenses for companies that don't have up to $75,000 for 3 months worth of expenses.
75 is the cap. though,
Yes.
Obviously, you're trying to get this out quickly, as you mentioned. Just the,
Pardon me?
You're trying to get this out quickly, obviously, so they can have access to this money. What do you say to the companies that they've seen business go down because of restrictions just as we head into Christmas, and maybe they can't wait that long? I mean, the ones that you want to have hang on, obviously.
I think we're going as fast as we can here. I mean, there are a whole bunch of companies that we will be sending funds to next week who were part of the folks that applied to the original program, which we talked about on Monday. And we do need to give people who didn't apply the first time at least a week or two to submit an application for the second round, and then obviously we'll move pretty quickly once we get those applications to turn those around. But you know, there's always a balance here between how long do you want to give people to actually have a chance to apply, and generally speaking, 2 weeks is considered to be pretty short with respect to that kind of request.
How big of an impact do you think this is going to have, I mean, for the business community that you're trying to help? Do you think this will save things, or how do you see it?
Well, I certainly think for many of the companies that got the first round of funding that went out on Monday, we heard incredibly positive things about what that was going to mean for their ability to stabilize their operations over the course of the next couple of months. I think it depends a lot on the nature of what your business is and where it is in the cycle, but I think for us, the most important thing here is to recognize and understand that we have a lot of small businesses that have been, you know, struggling all the way through this, and many of them are coming up on what we would call their year end. We recognize and understand that the 25% capacity limit is a real burden for many of those organizations, and that's why we felt it was appropriate to do something very significant here. Obviously, the Fed money will be coming at some point, but it's not going to be here by the first or second week of January.
All the restrictions, Governor, some frontline workers, including the ER doctor, said what you announced yesterday was too little, too late, and we're already in an emergency. Your response to that?
So we've spent a fair amount of time over the course of the fall and through the spring and the summer talking to our colleagues in the healthcare community and in the long-term care community, and have made most of our decisions based on the guidance and advice we've gotten from them. There are lots of competing opinions about all of this. And as I've said before, part of that's driven by the fact that there's a lot of data out there that doesn't necessarily correlate or line up perfectly either. And in some cases, the data we get changes with respect to what's going on with the virus, how it works, who we should be worrying about. But I think in many ways, what we're trying to do here is avoid the kind of really significant growth in cases, hospitalizations, and then ultimately, in some cases, death that came about as a result of what happened at Thanksgiving.
Governor, on a kind of different topic here, a question about vaccinations. There is the professional firefighters that has come out and say that they are waiting for a concrete plan on when first responders are getting vaccinated. Any response or any answers for them on that?
Well, there's an advisory group that we work with that helps us build our distribution plans, and I'll just make sure those folks reach out and talk to if they haven't talked to the PFFM, I'll just make sure they reach out and do. First responders are part of what I think of as the second tranche, which means sometime mid-January they should start to receive vaccinations. So if they don't think they've heard what they need to hear, I'll definitely reach out to that group and make sure they talk to them.
Governor, on $668 million, do you have an estimate or an expectation about how many businesses will be applying for this state?
No, but I can tell you that the first round that we did, the $50 million, we had about 9,800 applications. 10,700. Not all of them qualified, okay, but that's how many applications came in. Of those, 50 million got funded on Monday, and Mike thinks that about 300 to 350 million of eligible applications didn't get funded, which is why one of the things we said today was we want people who already applied and have an eligible application not to apply again, because this money we're going to start awarding next week is going to go to some of those folks who are part of that first round. And our goal is to work our way through some of that first round application pool at the same time as we're collecting applications for the second round.
This is approved, when will they get their first shot? Earliest shot?
Well, if they filed for the first set of applications, there are people that are going to get their money next week.
Governor, did I hear you correctly? Did you say you're going to be taking some of the money from this program from the stabilization funds?
No.
Okay. So reallocation of federal resources and
Other state funds.
how much?
Still working on it,
Do you need legislative?
but it's there.
Do you need legislative approval to reallocate any of this money?
No. Keep in mind that the program we're using here was authorized by the legislature. We wouldn't be able to do this without them already creating a framework to pursue this.
Governor, you said earlier on that folks are worn out.
Yeah.
A lot of people who know I come to this say, you look tired. How are you doing? How are you doing this whole thing?
I'm doing a lot better than most people. I think I can say that. Look, I think the simple truth is, for 10 months now, almost 11, no matter what you do, for work or play or life, has been affected by COVID. It's very unusual to find anyone who can say that some big piece of their life didn't change as a result of either the public health protocols, the change in the way organizations operate, or the nature of how people shop and how people play. Those things, or how they socialize. Those things have all been turned inside out and upside down. And that's just as true for our family and for the Lieutenant Governor and for the folks in our administration. And for the people who work in government and the people who work in the private sector. And I think for all of us, I mean, if you go back to the beginning of this, nobody had any idea how long this was going to last. I mean, I don't know if you all remember, but if you go back and look at some of the stories that you wrote back in March, around certain decisions that businesses and municipalities and states were making, there was this assumption that these decisions were going to last a few weeks, maybe a month. April vacation was the big conversation about when, people might think about going back to normal. This has turned out to be nothing like that, and it's required a willingness to stay in a lane of life that's very different than most people have lived for a really long time. If you told me in March that in December I still would not have had a single meal with my father in the meantime, after having a meal with him every week for as long as I can remember, I would have taken that bet in a second. If you told me that so many of the people that my wife and I hang out with, we would just never see, never, for the rest of 2020, I would have taken that bet too. I think part of the reason why this is hard on people is because the scale of the disruption, and in some cases the distress and the tragedy and the destruction that's come with this thing, is not only broad in the immediate sense, but it's going on almost a year here. And that's why I think we all understand why people are sort of thirsty for something that looks like what we all used to know. And I do believe that as the flywheel and the vaccines really starts to crank, we will get to that point. But that point is still, months away, and it's going to be important for people to recognize and understand that. But I certainly think, for all intents and purposes, I know a lot of people whose experience with this has been dramatically worse than mine.
Governor, you said on Monday that you look forward to
Okay? Which we had been working with them for almost a year on. And it would have been filed before that if it hadn't been for COVID, which got in the way of sort of wrapping up some of the details. A lot of really awful things and some good things have happened since then. And the legislature passed versions of the bill. They worked their way through a conference committee. We sent a series of amendments back. We then talked again to the caucus and to some other folks in the legislature and other interested parties, made some additional amendments there. And for the most part, those compromises, those 2 or 3 trips through this discussion have created a bill that, based on our last read of it, we will be honored to sign. It won't happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen Friday. It'll probably happen sometime next week.
Governor, what about the abortion language, which is now in your hands?
Did it make it to our desk last night? Well then, we'll take a look at it. Are you sure it made it to our desk last night?
I think so, yeah.
They did reenact it last night in the Senate? Okay. I haven't talked to the team about it.
It hasn't changed from, they sent it back the way they moved them away.
I made an exception with respect to the police bill. The other ones, I want to see them before we make a...
Last question?
Governor, not to belabor the point,
But to belabor the point,
not to belabor the point, well, unlikely at this point that this congressional stimulus deal would completely fall apart.
agree.
Where is the funding going to just pay for this program? Would you, and if this deal were to fall apart, would you have to cut back this $668 million small business relief program if federal money didn't materialize? And then
It's not the money, it's the flexibility. It's not the money, it's the flexibility. If this whole thing falls apart, we do lose some flexibility that exists in the new bill, okay? And that will require us, that just makes it a lot more complicated to make the math work. But I am anticipating that this thing is going to get signed and we're going to be able to fully implement this program and support literally thousands of businesses in Massachusetts who really need our help. Thanks, guys.
A young listener wants to know if Santa has to quarantine the entrance of the state or fill out any travel forms, does he get any special?
My understanding is that Santa has a travel form that is good in every community, every state, every county, and every country in the world. And I also understand that he gets tested on a pretty regular basis. So do most of the folks that are part of his team. And I'm pretty sure he was on the really early list on the vaccine as well. So I think Santa. I think every child should expect that Santa is loaded for. He knows how important this Christmas is and this holiday season is to kids. So I think Santa will be there, quote unquote, with bells on and all the proper papers that he needs to go pretty much anywhere he wants. Thanks, you guys.
Merry Christmas.
Same.